So with the full fixture list coming at us in midweek in the Championship, we're jumping straight into our midweek predictions. We're going to be discussing all of the weekend's games throughout today's video as well. So make sure to leave your thoughts on those games in the comments down below. But without any further ado, let's jump in. So let's kick things off with Birmingham against Huddersfield. Birmingham still finding themselves on this frustrating run right now. After that loss against Norwich this weekend, it's 5 without a win and they failed to score in 3 of their last 4 matches. A lot of the frustrations that have cropped up with Birmingham recently were present in that game against Norwich again. Once again, getting in some decent goal scoring positions, but squandering their lines when they got into those areas. Given the way Huddersfield have had a bit of a bounce under Darren Moore recently, I think they'll probably fancy their chances of getting something in this game. It's 2 points from 2 for Darren Moore since arriving at Huddersfield, and really quite unlucky not to snatch all 3 points against a very good Ipswich side at the weekend. Had it not been for that late Brandon Williams equaliser, it would have been a terrific start for Darren Moore. Generally speaking, I think that Huddersfield have a relatively decent fixture list coming up. Looking at their next 3 matches, they've got games against Birmingham, Sheffield Wednesday and QPR. I think there's quite a few points to be had there for Huddersfield, the way they're playing under Moore at the moment. Score prediction here, wouldn't be surprised if Huddersfield edged it, but I'm just going to back Blues to get a point from it, I think. Score prediction here, going to go for a 1-1er, so it'll be 3 consecutive draws for Darren Moore. Next up to Portman Road for Ipswich against Hull. I think this one could be quite an entertaining game of football. Ipswich definitely not at their best over the weekend. I think they definitely felt the absences of Sam Morsey in midfield, who was out through suspension, and missing Broadhead up top as well, who was out with a knock. This one's not going to be easy. Been really impressed by Hull of late. Obviously, decent, entertaining game of football that they were involved in over the weekend against Plymouth. That game also finishing as a 1-1 draw. Player who really stood out to me in that Hull performance was Philogene, the sort of player that just looks to make things happen absolutely every time he's on the ball. Got a really good assist in that game. And with the way Ipswich tend to play at home especially, they like to open up the pitch, create plenty of chances, but also leave themselves a little bit vulnerable at the back at times. I can see quite a few goals being scored in this one. Hull do have the players going forward who can get in behind, stretch that back line. I think they will make use of the opportunities if they do come around. Score prediction here, I think I'm sitting on the fence for this one, you know. Going to go for a 2-2 draw. Can see quite a few goals being scored in that one. Middlesbrough against Cardiff should be plenty of fun. Middlesbrough starting to get their act back together, looking more like the side that we thought they'd be this season. They've won their last 2 matches, but they're going up against one of the form sides in the league right now, Cardiff, who have won their last 4 games. Not only have been quite ruthless going forward, but defensively have looked really good of late. Kept 3 clean sheets in their last 4 matches. Now, I do think Middlesbrough will cause Cardiff more threats going forward than Rotherham did at the weekend. Don't think Rotherham even managed a shot on target in the end. So from that aspect, I'm expecting a bit more of an end-to-end game in this one compared to how Cardiff bossed it for a lot of that game against Rotherham, it would seem. But Cardiff now into the top 6 and can't be taken lightly. I've had a bit of a look over there upcoming fixtures for the month of October, and generally speaking, I think that Cardiff have got a relatively decent run coming up where I do think they'll continue to accumulate quite a few points. Then around about that November time, a few more tricky games start to pop up. With Middlesbrough at the moment though, they are creating plenty of chances. They've caught my eye a little bit more over these last couple of weeks with that win against Southampton and that win last time out against Watford as well. I do think both teams will score in this one because I still think there's that massive vulnerability with Middlesbrough, but sometimes in midweek we do get a few sort of topsy-turvy results thrown in. Score prediction here, my head says Cardiff get something here, but the other side of me just thinks that Borough may go on a bit of a roll after they've won their last 2 matches. So I'm going to back Borough here, 2-1, although I'm not overly confident in that. Next then to Plymouth up against Millwall. Plymouth a good point for them over the weekend, I thought, against a good Hull side, with Hull being on the longest unbeaten run in the Championship right now. Don't think that a 1-1 draw away from home can be sniffed at, and Plymouth will probably be fancying their chances in this game against the Millwall side, who's been absolutely all over the place recently. It was another 3-0 loss for Gary Rowett's side over the weekend against Swansea. This will be seen as a game where they sort of have to bounce back, you know, the sour taste that's left in your mouth after that sort of performance, but it's not going to be easy. Millwall do tend to be a little bit more standoffish on the road, and I do think they'll look to frustrate Plymouth for large parts of this game. But the way Plymouth have taken some teams apart, especially at home with the amount of chances they tend to create, it could get messy if Plymouth do get an early goal in this game. But I think it will be the sort of typical Rowett away performance where Millwall will frustrate Plymouth for large parts of this game, and it's whether or not they can nick a goal or two from a counter or a set piece or something like that and really use their physicality to get in the faces of Plymouth players. Score prediction here. I think if Plymouth score early, they go on to win this one, but I've just got something in my head that says Millwall will bounce back with a typical Rowett defensive performance, so I'm going to go for a 1-1 between those two in that game. Stoke against Southampton, a great matchup because both teams pulled out unexpected results over the weekend. Stoke turning things around from 2 goals down against Bristol City to win 3-2. A really important result there for Alex Neil, because it felt like had they lost that game and gone down without a fight, had Bristol City just eased over them and the game had finished 2-0, I think things around Stoke could have been quite toxic after. But the fact they pulled something out of the bag in the second half and showed the attacking quality that is there within that squad, if things do click, suddenly there's a little bit of renewed optimism in at Stoke. Having said that, they're now going up against the Southampton side, who pulled a result out of absolutely nowhere against Leeds. Southampton coming into that game having lost their last 4 matches. Leeds had really started to look like they were clicking under Farke, but what a performance from Russell Martin's men. 3-1 in the end. Adam Armstrong with some expert finishing in and around the box, and a bit of a reminder of just how good Southampton can be if everything does come together and click. There's obviously still a lot of talent in that squad, and these 3-game weeks can be absolutely huge for a team that was on a bad run of form to suddenly build a little bit of momentum. If you string together 3 wins on the bounce, or even get 2 wins and a draw from these 3 matches in quite quick succession, suddenly you fly up the league table and your season's looking totally different. Score prediction in this one, I think both teams will score. I still see quite a few vulnerabilities with each side defensively, but I think after that performance against Leeds, it's probably Southampton who I am leaning towards a little bit more, and Stoke still been a little bit unconvincing at home as well. Score prediction here, I'm going to go 2-1 Southampton. Back-to-back wins there for Russell Martin's men, if that's the case. After that, the Hawthorns for West Brom up against Sheffield Wednesday, and probably one of the most predictable results over the weekend. Sheffield Wednesday were well beaten by Sunderland, and if things continue like this for much longer, this Wednesday side really could go down as one of the worst sides we've ever seen at this level. No real sparks of optimism coming from that group right now. The statement that was put out prior to that game from Chanzeri was absolutely all over the place and just sums up the sort of toxic tone that's emerged over at Hillsborough since the beginning of the season. They won't want to face this West Brom side right now, let me tell you that. Obviously, being at Deepdale over the weekend, I got to see West Brom up close and personal, and hands down the best side we've played this season in terms of the performance on the day. I thought that Carlos Corberán got the tactical plan absolutely spot on. They completely shut down the midfield of that game, so Preston couldn't breathe when we tried to go through the middle of the pitch, and ultimately had too much in the wide areas as well. But really impressed with that midfield trio that West Brom had in that game of Mowat, Yokoshlu and Swift. I thought there was a great balance to that side in terms of the running power, what they were doing off the ball, but also the quality on it as well. Matt Phillips turning back the clocks in that game. He was skinning Brad Potts time and time again like there was no tomorrow, and overall a really impressive performance from the Baggies. And if that's the template for them going forward, who knows, we really could see them going on a good run of form, because I thought as bad as Preston were, West Brom were absolutely excellent. And a score prediction for this game, I'm going to go 3-0 West Brom. I think that physically, defensively and from an attacking output, they'll just have too much for Wednesday. Next then we go to Coventry up against Blackburn. Coventry finally claiming their 2nd win of the season over the weekend against QPR. Obviously, Mark Robins' side have been very draw heavy so far this season. Not been losing all too many matches, but not been seeing them out either. So that result against QPR could be the step in the right direction and could be the key for Coventry building a little bit of momentum and starting to get back into the sort of playoff conversation. Now they're going up against the Blackburn side, who are down on their luck right now. They've lost their last 3 matches. 4 of their last 5 games have been defeats. With that being said, Blackburn have had quite a tough fixture running recently. Of those 3 defeats that Blackburn have had recently, they've all come against sides who are currently in the top 4. So I suppose a few excuses could be made for this Rovers squad, but that's not going to be the case with these upcoming matches. I think that Blackburn have to show something in these next 2 away games against Coventry in midweek and then against QPR at the weekend. With that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if this one ended level, but I think I'm just swaying towards Coventry. I think that maybe a little bit of momentum could start to build on the back of that QPR result. Score prediction here, going to go 2-1 Coventry, which will be 4 losses on the bounce for Blackburn. After that to Ellen Road for Leeds against QPR, and this is why I just love the Championship, because of how utterly unpredictable it is. I had Leeds as the overwhelming favourites going into that game against Southampton at the weekend, but in the end Russell Martin's men had it all too easily. Some real defensive blunders from Leeds in that game, far too open at the back. On paper, this does seem like a relatively decent game to bounce back in, though it has to be said. QPR, who are down on their luck right now, currently in the bottom three, aren't scoring many goals at the moment, and obviously did look quite defensively suspect in that game against Coventry. Despite conceding 3 goals in that game against Cov, I do still think that QPR have it in them to be a defensively organised side that are capable of causing some problems on the road. You know, we saw against Birmingham, for example, in that goalless draw. And I think from QPR's perspective, the game plan coming into this game will be to sit back and frustrate Leeds, almost how Sheffield Wednesday managed to do when they nicked a point at Ellen Road. So Leeds will be well aware of that, but I think we have to see a reaction from Farke's men after the disastrous performance against Southampton. So score prediction in this one, I'm going to go 2-0 Leeds. Think that we have to see something more from them. After that, we go to Leicester up against Preston, and I mean, from a Preston perspective, to come off the back of a 4-0 loss to West Brom, the one team you don't want to be playing right now is top of the league Leicester, who are on an absolutely fantastic run right now. They've just come off the back of putting 4 goals past Blackburn, and Preston will probably have their tail between their legs after being hit for 4 against West Brom. With that being said, on the low generally so far, our away form has been really good. Obviously that's been the case so far this season, where we are still unbeaten on the road, but this is undoubtedly going to be our biggest test, and this whole week in general, actually coming off the back of that West Brom result, will be a real test of character. We've got 2 really tough away matches coming up. This one against Leicester in midweek, followed up by an away trip to Portman Road to face Ipswich. So the top 2 we're going away to play, and this could be season defining almost. You know, if we lose these 2 matches against Leicester and against Ipswich in the same fashion we did against West Brom, suddenly that can be a huge knock to your confidence and you can start to tumble down the league. With that being said, I just can't fathom Preston being as bad in this game as we were against West Brom. We could barely string 2 passes together in that game. West Brom got their game plan absolutely spot on, and I would expect Ryan Lowe to make quite a few changes to the starting 11 coming in for this game. I think 2 or 3 changes definitely needs to be on the agenda. With that being said, and I do think that Preston have to be more solid defensively here, it's really hard to look past Leicester right now. The way they're playing, the goals they're scoring. Score prediction, going to go 2-0 Leicester. Next then to Sunderland against Watford. Great way for Sunderland to bounce back over the weekend, albeit didn't have to work that hard for the 3 points in the end, but some great attacking play nonetheless against Sheffield Wednesday, and I think they'll really be fancying their chances against this Watford side, who aren't in a good moment right now, just 1 point above the relegation zone. Another loss for them over the weekend, and you can see what Valérien Ismaël is trying to achieve with this group right now, but they're just running into the same problems week in, week out, especially from a defensive point of view, and you just think with some of the attacking threats that Sunderland have, who are in form right now, they'll really fancy their chances against Watford in this game. Jack Clarke with another superb performance over the weekend. I thought on this sort of form, I think he is one of the best players in the Championship. I'd fancy him for a goal or 2 in this game. My slight doubt with Sunderland still comes from the fact that at home especially, I still think they're prone to a mistake and a slip up here and there. With that being said, I think I do back them as the favourites for this game, and I fancy them for a few goals as well. Score prediction, going to go 3-1 Sunderland, which won't be good news for Watford. Next then we go to Swansea up against Norwich, and credit where credit's due to Michael Duff. Not only has he strung together back-to-back wins, but back-to-back 3-0 wins on top of that. 3-0 against Millwall over the weekend. We said that we weren't going to get too carried away with that performance against Sheffield Wednesday, because I think that most teams are doing that against Sheffield Wednesday right now, but to follow it up with another convincing performance against Millwall will go a long way in easing the pressure on him right now, and suddenly Swansea can afford to start looking up the Championship rather than down it as they were doing before. For Norwich, it was an impressive result over the weekend. They absolutely needed to bounce back after that shambles of a performance they put in last time against Plymouth. They went ahead and did that, responded with a clean sheet and all 3 points against Birmingham. I still have some concerns about Norwich, especially on the road. Let's not forget they have lost back-to-back matches against Rotherham and Plymouth on the road, and I do think that with the way Swansea are playing right now, they will cause that Norwich side some problems. All being said, I think that both teams will create a few chances in this game, but it's hard to look past Swansea right now, and with a bit of a concern about Norwich on the road maybe, I'm going to back Swansea for another win here. 2-1 Swansea, I'm saying, in this game, which will be a huge result. And then to finish things off with Rotherham against Bristol City, two sides who are both looking to bounce back over the midweek schedule after some disappointing results over the weekend. Rotherham didn't offer a great deal against Cardiff, ultimately went down as a 2-0 loss. Don't think they had a shot on target in the end in that game. And creativity has been a bit of an issue on the whole for the Millers so far this season. Having said that, Bristol City fans, comment down below, where did that game go wrong for you against Stoke? You found yourself 2-0 up after 15 minutes, only to go on and throw it away in the second half, losing it 3-2. Felt like Bristol City were really starting to build up some positive momentum a couple of weeks ago, but that is now back-to-back losses after that defeat against Leicester and then that loss against Stoke. I do think that this is maybe a decent opportunity to bounce back against the Rotherham side, who have been a little bit down on their luck recently. They do find themselves in the bottom three. With that being said, I think that Rotherham, obviously have had a lot more joy in their home fixtures this season compared to how they've been on the road. And ultimately, these are the sort of games that will decide whether or not Rotherham will survive this season. They need to capitalise on these sorts of home matches. Score prediction here, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see this one end level. I think that Rotherham are a bit more of a solid outfit at home than they are on the road. Score prediction here, going to go for a 1-1 draw between these two. Should be interesting. But guys, there you have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. If you did go in to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do get all your thoughts in the comments down below. Plenty going on in midweek in the Championship, so plenty to discuss. But apart from that, guys, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.